It might take us a minute, but there is a point to all this. So, hang in there, okay? I moved to Colorado from Tennessee a while ago, but not so long ago that I don't still feel the need to explain that to people. Colorado and Tennessee are essentially different planets, and one of the ways that they are very different places is that people in Colorado like art, like a lot. When I would meet people in Tennessee and try to explain that I make comics for a living, they just straight up didn't process that that's a thing that you can do. Here, everybody's doing something. Everybody is doing some kind of weird side project or some kind of creative thing. I think people here just don't really wait for permission to do things the way that people in the South do. If somebody wants to be a painter, they just buy some paints and get going, you know? So when I meet people here and I explain, yeah, I make the comic, they're like, oh, cool. I don't have to do any front loading of like who I got permission from to be allowed to do this. What that means is that people in Colorado have opinions on art and independent artists and the kinds of things that they like and that they don't like. And most of them seem to think that my art is too corporate. I don't know how many people watching this actually read my comic or are familiar with me and my work, but this is a very funny thing to say. I'm not even angry about it because it's such an objectively incorrect read on me and my stuff that I can't really be upset about it. But I am also getting reviews from artists who had access to traditional resources for learning to make art, that my work is in fact too sloppy. I should be taking more pride in my work and cleaning it up and tightening up the screws, you know? I'm leaving in too many fingerprints. The other thing that I've noticed about Colorado is that nobody uses the internet. I guess that's because people go outside here and it's not terrifying every time you leave the house. So they view digital space as nothing. They think the internet is Instagram and Facebook and maybe Twitter, and that's it. So when I'm like, yeah, all my readers are online. It is a web comic. It is an internet thing. They just don't really get it. It's so crazy to me because the internet for me has always been the way to access the artistic community, because there was nothing in Tennessee for someone making queer apostate shonen. It's an equalizer. It removes the middleman. Anybody can make anything if they sit down and do it, and then you can share it with other people who are interested, regardless of where you're at. And they don't see it like that. They look at me like I'm nuts, like, no, it's just influencers and bots and brands. They do not go for that sort of thing here. People here shop local, they support small businesses. You'd think that would mean that they liked the internet, but people are so goddamn sick of being advertised to. The only internet that they know is the current one that has been completely privatized and scrubbed and sanitized. They don't want any part of it, and I can't blame them. But then, when these artists do go online, when I do check their profiles or go see what they've posted, they're just posting branded shit too. They are indistinguishable from the corporations that they're complaining about. It's not that the internet isn't still here and still functional. It's just that you have to live here. You can't just log in, post a link to your project, and then leave. People have learned to tune that shit out aggressively. They don't respond to it. And frankly, they shouldn't. The internet is not any different from real life. You still are socializing with other human beings. If you walked into a room full of people and you were like, hey, read my book, and then left, do you think anybody would give a shit about the book or you? Nobody wants to hang out with that guy. And then he turns around and he goes, oh man, in-person networking just doesn't work. In in 2025. It's just not a thing. You've got to respect your audience. You can't just treat them like numbers and wallets. Independent creators don't have that luxury. We gotta give a shit. You gotta shitpost, you gotta hang out, or you're gonna look like a bot. And I think it's the same with art too. Those of us out here in the trenches are never going to get Disney numbers. We are catering to freaks, and none of us respond to stuff that's filed down. The fingerprints shouldn't just be left in, they should be framed. People are starved for human media for humans, and humans are messy things. If you clean it up, you're taking out the humanity. You know, furthering the weird disconnect with digital stuff out here in the mountains. Most of my work is digital, and people here associate digital art with sanitized, filed down corporate work. So they're not into it. And listen, none of this is to say that I don't take my work seriously and want to improve. I probably take my job way too seriously, given that it is cartoons. But I think improving should only be in service to more effectively communicating the thing that you want to say, which should be sincere. I only want to get better at art so that I can more effectively communicate sincerity. I think improving for the sake of achieving some impossible masochistic ideal of objectively good art is kind of a useless idea. There's this art school attitude I keep encountering where there's this distinct line between fans and artists. Real, serious artists don't enjoy things. They don't make fan art or buy it or engage with media in a way that is unbecoming. And that is such a red flag for me. Not only because that means you're exclusively studying shit that you don't actually care about, but you're also approaching art and creation from an extremely defensive perspective. You're not making shit that brings you joy. You're making shit constantly looking over your shoulder waiting for somebody to hate it. Or waiting around for somebody more important than you to validate it. I can't care too much or people will think I'm a fan of things. I can only like things that an artistic authority has signed off on as quality. Cool, you get out what you put in, so what kind of work will come from this? The audience can feel when the author is ironically detached, or outright disdainful of people who care about things. Also, people who care about things are the ones keeping us in business, but that's a discussion for a different day. And the audience doesn't want to fuck with it. Why should they get excited about your work if you've taught them enthusiasm is embarrassing? What kind of community are you building? Because that's the whole fucking thing. Sharing art and making any sort of long-term project is a community building exercise, or it should be. Why are you saying something if you don't want it to be heard? If you don't want to be here, neither does the audience. You don't have to use the internet if you don't want to, but I do think that people should revel in their rough edges more often. It's not a rough edge, it's a human voice. That's the thing people can't get anywhere else, and probably the reason they like you and your stuff. You should be using it any way you can. In your art and in the way you present yourself. You can't resonate with the right people without making noise, so you should be doing that intentionally. It'll also piss off anybody who thinks caring about things is plebeian, and they'll avoid you and your work because they're weak and think cringe is real. Cringe as a concept is the enemy of passion, which means it's no friend of ours. So what I'm saying is, you should draw more squids.